What turns a wine country visit into an incredibly memorable experience? What are the hidden perks of off-peak wine travel? And how has digital media transformed the way people plan wine trips? In today's episode, you'll hear the stories and tips that answer those questions in part 2 of our chat with Amy Wislocki, editor-in-chief of Decanter, the world's most prestigious wine magazine. You don't need to have listened to part 1 from last week first, but if you missed it, go back and have a listen after you finish this one. By the end of our conversation, you'll also discover what many wine lovers don't realize about the winemaking history of the country of Georgia, how important authentic cultural immersion is to wine travel, how wine tourism can help preserve cultural heritage in regions recovering from political strife, the connection between wineries and wildfire, how and why many wineries are now catering to families, Amy's approach to balancing practical information with the romance of locations in The Ultimate Wine Lover's Travel Guide, what Amy would include in her perfect wine day itinerary, how the pandemic has impacted wine travel, how environmental consciousness is changing wine tourism, how digital media has transformed wine travel, how the rise of influencers have changed the wine industry, what Amy would add to a new edition of the book, the questions you should ask about wine travel, how Amy wants readers to feel after reading this book, and which famous figures Amy would want to share a bottle of wine with. Do you have a thirst to learn about wine? Do you love stories about wonderfully obsessive people, hauntingly beautiful places, and amusingly awkward social situations? Well, that's the blend here on the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. I'm your host, Natalie McLean, and each week I share with you unfiltered conversations with celebrities in the wine world, as well as confessions from my own tipsy journey as I write my 3rd book on this subject. I'm so glad you're here. Now pass me that bottle, please, and let's get started. Welcome to episode 345. Continuing on my special series about Canadian wines and spirits, I'll share my recommendations with you that were part of my guest appearance recently on CTV's CP24 breakfast television show. It's great to be back with you, Nick. We're going to dive into some delicious patriotism today. We're starting with a gorgeous white wine from Innisfere Estate in Norfolk County, Ontario. Their Pinot Grigio is crisp and dry with mouth-watering notes of lime zest, green apple, and a hint of minerality. Its racy acidity will cut through melting cheese and fries in poutine faster than a lumberjack can hauler timber. Or try it with a soft cheese, like President's Choice Double Cream Brie, for a combo that's creamy and zesty all at once. It's like a sparkler for your palate, perfect for fireworks and fresh air. This family-run farm turned vineyard takes full advantage of Norfolk's breezy microclimate, and the tasting patio has a gorgeous panoramic view of the vineyard, farm, Lake Erie, and the Inner Bay. They're a combination of a working farm and winery, not only offering wines, but also their fresh produce. Consider visiting them for a local farm-to-table experience. Next up, I have the Character Red from Hester Creek in the South Okanagan, which is a rich blend that whispers cedar and blackberry with a velvety finish that lingers like a good campfire story. This estate was founded in 1968 by Italian pioneer Joe Busnardo, who brought vine cuttings back from Italy in his suitcase. Today, they're a full-fledged wine destination with a villa hotel, restaurant, and cooking classes. This red is divine with President's Choice Blue Menu smoked Gouda, smoky, savory, and smooth. Or think about it with barbecue ribs and grilled veggie skewers by the lake while ignoring your inbox. If you're looking for a cocktail, we have a ready-to-pour white sangria from Mastronardi in Kingsville, Ontario. It's sunshine in a bottle with notes of lemon, lime, and a juicy kiss of sweetness. No need for measuring or muddling. Just pour it over ice, toss in some sliced fruit if you're feeling extra, and voila, you're suddenly the fancy friend without having to Google anything. It's so crushable, I'd pair this with President's Choice Mango Chili Havarti for a sweet heat moment. Simple, breezy, and summer easy. And let's end on a high note. Literally in the highlands of Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, Glen Breton is North America's first single malt whiskey. Their copper stills, imported from Scotland in 1969, are still in use today. Glen Breton has traveled to the top of Everest and the South Pole, and it famously won the right to keep Glen in its name after an international battle with Scotland's Whisky Association. Pair it with President's Choice 3-year-old aged cheddar. It brings out the toffee spice and subtle smoke in the whiskey. The liquid form of Canadian rebellion, smooth, strong, and seductively charming. Glen Breton is terrific in classic cocktails like the old-fashioned or whiskey sour, but it's also just as well savored straight up, like life. Thank you for sharing these amazing bottles and bites. Where can we find you and these wines and spirits and cheeses online? On Instagram, I'm at Natalie McLean Wine. Online, nataliemclean.com. All right, back to today's episode. But just before we dive in, I wanted to let you know that the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast is a finalist for the prestigious Paul Mall Award for the Best Global Wine Communicator Audio Awards 2025. I have been bouncing off the ceiling since Richard Hemming, Master of Wine and columnist for Jancis Robinson, told me the news this morning. I'd like to congratulate the other nominated shows from the United Kingdom, United States, and Germany. The winners will be announced at the Gala Awards ceremony on September 5th at the gorgeous Symphonia Smith Square in London, England. Thank you to listening to this show. You keep me motivated to interview the most fascinating people in the wine world so that I can share their stories and tips with you. I'd also like to thank my amazing podcast editor, Alex Stennett, for all that she does with her wizardry in editing these episodes so I don't sound so, well, like I usually sound. I sound polished and energetic, and thank you, Alex. So 2 of you are going to win a copy of Decanter Magazine's new book, The Ultimate Travel Guide for Wine Lovers. If you'd like to win a copy, please email me and let me know you'd like to win. It doesn't matter where you live. I'll choose 2 winners randomly from those who contact me at natalie@nataliemclean.com. In other bookish news, if you're reading the paperback or ebook or listening to the audiobook of my memoir, Wine Witch on Fire, Rising from the Ashes of Divorce, Defamation and Drinking Too Much, a national bestseller and one of Amazon's best books of the year, I'd love to hear from you at natalie@nataliemclean.com. I'll put a link in the show notes to all retailers worldwide at nataliemclean.com/345. Okay, on with the show. What were some of the most off-the-radar places that were included, like you would never imagine?
Well, I guess, Charleston, I guess the US places, the US up-and-coming wine regions were probably, to me, even things like Georgia.
The country, not the state.
Yes, exactly. The country, Georgia. Even that nowadays is becoming more recognized as a wine region and as a kind of amazing destination. But yeah, so we do have an article on Georgia.
And it's the cradle of winemaking history, 8,000 years. And why do you think that wine lovers, more broadly speaking, don't realize that? Why is that story not as well known, perhaps, as it should be?
I think it is getting more visibility now in the UK at any rate. I don't know about where you are, but I guess it's because like the availability of the wines hasn't been, and probably the quality, because during communism, the wines were not very good. So I guess even though it's an ancient wine civilization, in terms of modern winemaking and quality, it's still probably quite a young industry, which is true of lots of places, I guess, that have only improved their winemaking since certain political regimes ended or whatever.
Sure. In that piece, it also talks about experiencing integrated agriculture. How important is authentic cultural immersion, like staying with families or whatever, to wine travel? Or is it just, I guess, different people prefer different experiences? But what's your take on that?
Well, I guess you could ask that about any kind of travel, that staying with a local family will give you a more authentic experience. But In wine, it's probably more the case than ever because so many of the producers will be these tiny kind of family, like they might have been handed down through generations, these small vineyards, lots of regions. They're just a patchwork of tiny, tiny vineyards and wineries. So I guess that just gives you like a real insight into the real existence of it rather than just the kind of the polished tourist trail.
Sure. And then just one more point about Georgia. It's described as a rebirth post-conflict. Do you think wine tourism can help preserve or resurrect cultural heritage in regions recovering from political strife?
For sure. And, I think even for quite pragmatic reasons, I'm sure like a country's government will see the benefit of promoting its winemaking as a way of bringing tourism in and as a way of kind of helping to stimulate the economy. It's an obvious way, isn't it, to help grow the economy? And it's an opportunity because I guess some countries, you couldn't really visit. They were kind of closed to international visitors. So now if they're opening their doors again, it's exciting opportunity for people who want to discover new things.
Absolutely. You mentioned some unique experiences like llama trekking at Divine Llama Vineyards in North Carolina. Is that like using llamas to go in through the vineyards? What were they doing there?
I haven't done it myself, but from my
Yeah, well,
my
after
under
that horse
my
experience, I don't blame
yeah,
you.
well, yeah. My understanding is that you go on a trek and you're given your own llama on a kind of lead and you walk. It's like taking a dog for a walk, except it's a llama. I think it's like a 2 hour walk or something, and then you feed your llama some treats, and then I mean it all sounds quite memorable and strange, but they look quite cute and fluffy. They don't look too scary.
Okay, so we're not riding the llamas, but was there another unexpected encounter, animal encounter, or anything else that was struck you as, well, that's different, a kind of activity based at a winery?
Well, we did write once, this isn't in the book, but we wrote in the magazine about Thailand and their wine scene. It's another place you don't really think of as a wine destination, but they do make wine in Thailand. Sometimes they have elephants trampling the vines at night, which it's not a problem we get in the English vineyards. And you can do I think it's Monsoon Valley, which is one of the most, probably the most well-known Thai wine producer. You can do like a 4x4 safari, see kind of real wildlife. And the author talks about it as, I think he used this phrase, Tuscany meets the jungle or something. Sounds quite different. But I mean, everywhere, even in Europe, you've got, wolves in Tuscany and, all kinds of things going on. And obviously in America, you've got coyote and bears in wine regions. And,
Sure. And they have wild baboons or something in South Africa.
that's right. Yeah, baboons and monkeys in South Africa. And yeah, lots of things going on.
They all love those grapes. You mentioned one winery has a swimming pool in the middle of the vineyards, which kids love. Like you also offer tips for families who want to travel and maybe potential activities for children, which I thought was kind of neat.
I mean, so many wineries are now catering for families, which makes total sense. You're unlikely as a wine lover to be going there on your own. You probably are going with your family or even a partner who's not necessarily into wine. Or so there are so many sophisticated things, even in Bordeaux, which you wouldn't expect to offer that kind of thing, has got some chateaux that offer really quite sophisticated family activities, like Dagassac, I think is one of them. And, but there are many that offer good things for children.
And you also put a lot of helpful details on logistics, like ferry ride times or whatever else you have to get. How do you keep that from getting out of date the day it's published? Are you doing an online component or something for those details?
I mean, look, the fact is that obviously in a book format, as soon as it's published, it is going to be out of date. You can't help that. But I think what we're hoping is that the book will inspire people to make these trips. Hopefully, most of the details will be correct. But I think very few people will go on holiday without actually doing their own research or checking things. So, and most of the wineries and hotels and restaurants will still be there. But yes, obviously, you might want to check the finer details if it's in a book that was published 2, 3 years ago or something.
Sure, those details are helpful.
In articles like this, in the book like this, it's about getting a balance between, you do want to give people practical information, obviously, and practical advice, but you also want to kind of get across the romance and the magic of a place and really kind of try and evoke why you should visit this place. Why is it so special? But in terms of the practical information, I mean, that's why we do. So you'll notice that lots of the articles in the book have what we call My Perfect Day. So it's a box within the article where people actually suggest an itinerary for a day, so morning, lunchtime, afternoon, evening, then where you end up, where you eat, where you stay the night, because I think that's really useful. And that's why it's so good to have insider knowledge, because it's about knowing how to put the pieces of the jigsaw together in terms of like which winery is near which restaurant, and how long will it take to go there and there. And that I think is really invaluable information that's actually a doable itinerary.
Absolutely. So, yeah, those perfect day itineraries, they're wonderful. Like there's one in Rioja. What for you makes a perfect wine itinerary or makes it truly exceptional versus just sort of going to tasting room after tasting room, which is how a lot of people approach it?
I think it would be to mix it up a bit. Well, A, not to try and cram too much into the day, because then that just becomes like too stressful and it's all bound to go wrong at some point. So I guess what I would say is probably a bit of planning will help to make it a perfect day rather than assume you can just rock up, and often you do kind of need to book in advance. But I would say to have a combination of things. So maybe just like even just two winery visits, maybe like one in the morning, one in the afternoon. Obviously, for me, having really good food is important as well as part of it. And lovely views, hopefully. So maybe going somewhere for lunch where you can sit outside and just enjoy the beautiful views, get some fresh air. Maybe go for like maybe do a bit of activity at some point. So one of the vineyards, you might be able to hire a bicycle or go for a little hike around the vineyards or something like that. So just to mix it up a bit, maybe have a bit of culture, stop off and see like a beautiful village that has some nice culture, or see some of their architectural churches, or so just I don't know, just to have a mixture of stuff is I think is really nice. We don't only mention wineries, we do say, oh, while you're here, go and see this or that, or to try and bring it all in.
Right. And post COVID, I know, at least here in Canada, a lot of wineries now require reservations. You can't just show up all the time, or there might be a big busload of people there. So it does pay to plan that, to not make assumptions that you can just walk into a winery these days.
I mean, I think some you can, especially I guess if they have a shop, like a cellar door, you might be able to turn up. But even those, if they're doing tours, the tours might be full. So I think the norm is probably to check in advance whether you need to book.
Yeah. You also emphasize in some places off peak travel to places like Corsica. What are the advantages? I guess lower crowds, discounts perhaps. Is there anything else?
Well, I mean, I guess the main thing I would think of is that the winemaker, they might have more time to spend with you, because there must be certain times of the year that are really busy, not only in terms of tourists, but in terms of the winemaking and wine growing calendar. So there may be certain times of the year where they're not doing very much, and then they'll have more time to actually talk to you and explain things to you. So that I'd say that would probably be the main benefit. And I guess just actually being able to get in to some places, like, the most sought after wineries, there might be some wineries that are just fully booked for ages. And, if it's the most famous place in an area, it'll be easier to get access. Although I guess they might not be open all around the year. You'd have to check.
Yeah. Underscore check. The book also highlights how places like Bordeaux have transformed from being sort of, quote, famous for aloofness. Grand Chateau gates closed to visitors. Now estates are queuing up to welcome tourists. Is there a particular winery that stands out as doing this really well? Obviously, they're trying to embrace their customers more with global competition and that sort of thing.
I think there are so many, particularly in Bordeaux, that you could say that about, because that was the image. Even when I joined Decanter, the image was very much of kind of closed gates and things, big grand iron chateau gates.
You had to know someone to make an introduction for you, a letter.
Yeah, now there are so many that welcome visitors. I mean, like, for example, Pape Clement, which is a kind of very well respected winery, and used to be kind of famous for being quite aloof, and now have very elaborate tourism offerings and even helicopter rides and all kinds of things that you can do for families. So, and I think in Bordeaux, even more than some other regions, they're recognizing the benefits of that, because, the way obviously that Bordeaux is sold, they don't always know who their end customer is. They don't know who's drinking their wine, because it goes through so many layers of distribution before it gets to the end customer. So I think they're realizing the value of actually being able to connect with end customers. It's good for us, isn't it? As wine lovers, it's a great trend that the wine world is opening up more.
Absolutely. Several regions, like the Margaret River in Australia and Marlborough in New Zealand, emphasize their sustainability practices. Is environmental conscientiousness or consciousness changing wine tourism in your mind? Did you see that coming through in some of these articles?
Well, we have done specifically articles for people like, doing a region by bike, for instance. So some wine regions lend themselves to being explored by bike, or you could even walk, or in some places if it's quite close together. But then on the other hand, quite a few of the wineries are quite off the beaten track. I think, you usually do have to get out of the cities and stuff. So at the end of the day, realistically, you probably will have to use some kind of transport in many cases to get to these wine regions. But it doesn't mean that you can't prioritize going to see wineries who have some kind of sustainable accreditation, or, if you want to kind of go down that route or visit wineries who are organic or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I think there's I don't know if it's in Napa Green, I think is an organization in Napa Valley, California, where you can visit all the organic or sustainable wineries. They have a wine route where you can just visit those places.
Exactly, that kind of thing. And obviously, in some kind of regions, I mean, obviously, like New Zealand, you've got something like what, 90% of the wineries are organic or something. That might be wrong, but I mean, they have a very high percentage of. So if that was a real preoccupation, you could, but then obviously you'd have to fly to New Zealand, which wouldn't be very sustainable. So
I
I
know
guess
that begs
it's
the
all a
question.
trade.
Where,
It's all a
where do you
trade-off.
stand on that? Do you think like you've got a book encouraging people to travel, which has many pleasures and is good for the wineries, but
We're not going to tell people what their own moral compass should be. I mean, obviously, if people don't want to do that kind of travel, then they can just visit the wine regions on their own doorstep. So, now even in England, we've got exciting wine regions that you can visit. So I can do that if they don't want to go on a plane or whatever.
sure, sure. The last section of the book, or near the end, it's the world's 50 best wine trips, which I think people will love. Get the book for that alone. And looking at this section, you rank these based on their popularity on Decanter.com.
Yeah, I mean, we essentially took our travel articles, our travel section, and we just did a list. We took the last 12 months of articles and we looked at the page view, like hits, how much traffic the articles had got. And so then we did it in that order, basically. And in the book, obviously, we only had room to do like a paragraph on each one. But then what we did was we created a special URL so that people could go and see the whole list of 50, and then they can click into each article if they want to read the whole thing.
Oh, great. That's great. Did any surprises emerge in terms of what wine travelers were actually interested in versus what you thought they would want in that list?
To be honest, I think the number one was Tuscany, like wineries to visit in Tuscany, which is not really much of a surprise because every wine lover wants to go to Italy and specifically probably to Tuscany, don't they? So, I mean, there were some quirky things on there. I think we had was like Uruguay and like Franciacorta, for instance. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily say it's quirky, but I visited Franciacorta recently. Yeah, I just had no idea. It was such a stunning place. And I remember that was on the top 50, but it's an hour from Milan and it's stunning. And a lot of people don't even know the wines because 80% of the wines are not exported. So this is an example of a place where you could go and it's a stunning region. And then you can just taste these amazing sparkling wines, which are, made in the same way as champagne, but don't really have the profile of champagne.
Wow. So you've overseen, as you mentioned, Decanter's transformation from a print-only publication to one with robust digital channels, including Decanter.com, Decanter Premium. How has digital media transformed wine travel writing and the way people discover destinations, other than, of course, Googling it or asking ChatGPT? Are there other ways that the new digital world has influenced?
Things come up now, don't they? So, people will be on social media and things will just come up on your feed that look beautiful. And I guess that's the advantage of the digital format is that you get this cut. I mean, obviously, it's lovely to have a coffee table type book that you can sit back with your glass of wine and flick through all these glossy photos and dream about where you'd like to go. But the advantage, obviously, of digital is that they can show you whole reels of a place and show you video. And I guess that just inspires people then to do more research. So then they might be sparked off by something they see on TikTok or wherever, or Facebook or Instagram. And then they might go to decanter.com to, okay, oh, I saw that looks great. Let's look at Franciacorta. And then they might read the whole article. So it's all should be complementary, really.
And have you noticed a profound influence from wine influencers, or however you want to characterize, the TikTokers and so on?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean they have massive profile and they influence everything, don't they? So yeah, there is a big rise, and I guess and mainly in the sense that it's democratizing wine and helping to bring in a new generation of wine lovers, which is great, which is as it should be. It's easy to be kind of snooty about these things, but if it brings more people in, then that's got to be a good thing.
And in a new edition of this guide, or the next edition, or a companion, if you were to do one, what handful of wine regions would you like to see? Articles have not yet even been commissioned, but what do you think you might add to a new edition?
We couldn't include everything. There are wine regions and even maybe to see more depth. I mean, what might be really great would be to have a whole travel book on just like France or just Italy, or, and really do a like deep dive and drill down. And you could have like a map of all the wine regions at the beginning and then go around all of the wine regions and talk about all of them, because we didn't, like with France, I don't think we've got, I can't remember, but I don't think we've got an article on Jura, for instance, or, which is meant to be stunning, or, there are lots of places that aren't mentioned. So that might be nice to do it more in that way.
Yeah. And do you think virtual reality or the metaverse or other tools will ever rival the real deal when it comes to wine travel?
Well, no, I mean, it's not going to put a glass of wine in your hand, is it?
No, that's true. But that sense of being in the landscape, I don't think it can
Yeah, I mean,
simulate, but it can't replicate, I don't think.
it's not really a substitute, is it, at the end of the day?
No, it's not.
Like, it's not like watching somebody swirl a glass of wine on social media. It's not the same as taking a
Is
sip.
drinking it, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Is there a question about wine travel you wish people asked more frequently, but they don't?
Obviously, in the articles, we want to try and recommend lots of places, and also catering for different budgets and, yeah, different experiences, different. So for me, it would probably be, if I was talking to the authors of the articles, it would be, look, if you could just pick one, or what was the one that really stood out to you? What was the one winery? If you were going to visit one, what would it be and why? Or, just getting them to really narrow it down, or an insider's tip that most tourists wouldn't know. Just really like tapping on that inside knowledge.
Mm-hmm. How do you want readers to feel after they've sort of flipped through this book, even if they don't read it cover to cover? Some will, but it's a beautiful book to flip through. What do you hope they take away from it?
Inspiration. At the end of the day, it's escapism, isn't it? It's pure escapism, sitting down with a book like that, especially if you've been sitting at a screen all day working, and you just, and hopefully people are reading it with a glass of wine at hand, and it's just about inspiring people and aspirations. It's like, I mean, it's about just having something to work towards and look forward to at the end of the day, because we all need that.
Definitely, now more than ever.
Yeah,
There's got to be
that's for
something to
sure.
aspire to, or to reward ourselves. So we wrap up. If you could share a bottle of wine with anyone outside of the wine industry, living or dead, who would that be? And which wine would you open? And also, where would you want to be to share that wine with them?
So I guess if I went for like the kind of historical, like interesting figures, I'd probably go for like maybe like Homer, because I studied classics at university. So it'd be quite cool to meet Homer. We could probably drink a nice Greek wine together.
Would you meet him in Greece? Like,
Oh yes, for sure,
yes,
yeah.
of course.
Or Ernest Shackleton. And I mean, I have always wanted to go to the Antarctic, but I think it might be a bit too cold to kind of sit and drink a bottle of wine. So maybe not there on that
A
occasion.
nice wine,
Or
maybe.
like, yeah, if it was somebody living, then maybe, I'm quite into politics and stuff. So maybe Mark Carney, I quite fancy meeting him. Or like Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell from this podcast that I listen to, The Rest is Politics, which is very good. Or even someone who might be like nice to look at, like Ewan McGregor or something, I could talk to. So very eclectic.
Oh, you've
And
got the whole range there. You could have a dinner party.
as for the wine, I mean, I have got like wines that I've tasted in my life, like, and really, really, they've like wow moments for me. Like Aubryon Blanc, I tasted like shortly after I joined Decanter. That's an amazing wine, and I don't even think I've tried it since. Clos Santoun from Alsace, the Riesling, amazing. Or you could just have a nice bottle of champagne or something. But at the end of the day, if I was going to be having dinner with those people, or sharing, it wouldn't be about the wine, it would be about them. So I might not want to drink something that's going to distract too much from it. So I might just have like, just a nice bottle of like rosé, or like a Greek Cinnamavro or something like that.
That's practical thinking. And if you could put up a billboard in downtown London, what would it say?
Probably be something like, don't be so materialistic. Like, I do like that saying that's like, happiness is wanting what you have, not having what you want. Because in downtown London, it's also about shopping and materialism or something. Or I guess it could be something like cherish every moment, but it all sounds a bit like cliche, but something that might just stop and make people like, oh yeah, remember.
Right. Wonderful. Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to mention, Amy?
Not really. I mean, I guess the only thing would be, so yeah, we are celebrating our 50th anniversary Decanter this year.
Congratulations.
So thank you. I mean, obviously I was only 3 when it started, but so it's not all down to me. But it would be really interesting to hear from kind of long-time subscribers or even like new subscribers who haven't been reading the magazine very long, just about their experiences of Decanter and what they gained from it. I think it'd be interesting.
Absolutely. So if you want to get in touch with Amy, you can email me at natalie@nataliemclean.com, and I will put you in touch with Amy, as she'd love to hear from you. And where can we find you and your magazine, your book online?
Well, obviously, decanter.com is our main website, and you can access Decanter Premium from there. And so that's really the hub for everything. Decanter is also on social media as well, obviously, with Instagram and Facebook. And we've got a social media editor. We do have our social channels as well.
Terrific. And the book will probably be available on most bookstores, I would assume.
Yeah,
Amazon,
I mean, I'm not sure. I haven't
Chapters.
checked on Amazon. It probably is, but yeah. So this is the book, which
Oh, there's the book.
yes,
Beautiful. So
yes,
for those
which
who
it
are
does look
just
very nice.
listening, it is a gorgeous coffee table book, a hardcover, big, beautiful photos. So definitely worth getting.
Yeah, so it's called The Ultimate Wine Lover's Travel Guide.
Okay. So be sure to pick up your copy. 2 of you will win copies, but why chance it? Just get your own copy so that you have it and can start dreaming about your next wine vacation. Amy, thank you so much for this. Wonderful tips and stories. I'm going to say goodbye for now, but thank you for your time
All right.
and
Thank
for
you. It's been
sharing your
great fun.
expertise. Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers. Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed our chat with Amy. Here are my takeaways. Number 1, what turns a wine country visit into an incredibly memorable experience? Amy advises to mix it up a bit and not cram too much into a day because then it becomes stressful. And I have to say, agreed 100%. Plan a bit, and that will make it the perfect day. Often you need to book in advance, so maybe just 2 winery visits a day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. I like that pace too. Go somewhere for lunch where you can sit outside and enjoy the beautiful views, get some fresh air. You might be able to hire a bicycle or go for a hike in the vineyards. See a beautiful village that has some nice culture or some architectural churches, kind of mix it up a bit. Number 2, what are the hidden perks of off-peak wine travel? Amy says the main thing is that the winemaker might have more time to spend with you. There may be certain times of the year that are really busy, not only in terms of tourists, but also in terms of winemaking. Also, you have a higher chance of just being able to get into some of the most sought-after wineries. There might be some wineries that are just booked for ages. And number 3, how has digital media transformed the way people plan wine travel? Amy observes that on social media, you can watch videos and reels of the place, which inspires people to do more research. So they might be sparked by something they saw on TikTok or Instagram, and then they might go to Decanter.com and read a more in-depth article. So it's all complementary. In the show notes, you'll find the full transcript of my conversation with Amy, links to the Decanter website and book, the video versions of these conversations on Facebook and YouTube Live, and where you can order my book online now, no matter where you live. If you missed episode 49, go back and take a listen. I chat with writer Stephanie Pichet about flying with flavor, travel, and wine stories. I'll share a short clip with you now to whet your appetite.
The classic chorizo. I used to do one which is really fascinating. It's really easy, and I don't even have to write a recipe for anyone for this. Take a fresh chorizo sausage, just roast it enough so that you can slice it in pieces, and then top it with red wine, and you're poaching it. So you're actually cooking the chorizo in red wine. So all of the garlic and paprika inside the sausage comes out into the wine, kind of makes its own sauce. And the chorizo takes on a whole different flavor because it's been poached in the red wine. And then just pairing that with a classic Rioja, maybe a Crianza or something. The chorizo, I think, is going to overpower it a little bit if you have something that's too big and bold. It's kind of like Spain on a little plate, that little bit of meat and that little bit of fat and the little bit of red wine sauce and then the classic Rioja. That's pretty much what everyone would have at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon in Spain.
You won't want to miss next week when we chat with Susan Lin, a Master of Wine and Master of Fine Arts in classical piano and musicology. We'll chat about the interaction of music and wine when Susan joins us from her home in San Francisco. If you liked this episode or learned even one thing from it, please email or tell a friend about the podcast this week, especially someone you know who'd be interested in learning more about wine travel tips and destinations. It's easy to find the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. Just tell them to search for Natalie McLean Wine on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, their favorite podcast app, or they can listen to the show on my website at nataliemclean.com/podcast. Email me if you have a sip, tip, question, or if you'd like to win one of 2 copies of the books I have to give away. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on this episode, or if you've read my book or are listening to it. Email me at natalie@nataliemclean.com. In the show notes, you'll find a link to take a free online food and wine pairing class with me called The 5 Wine and Food Pairing Mistakes That Can Ruin Your Dinner and How to Fix Them Forever at nataliemclean.com/class. That's all in the show notes at nataliemclean.com/345. Thank you for taking the time to join me here. I hope something great is in your glass this week. Perhaps a wine that you discovered off-season or off the beaten track. You don't want to miss one juicy episode of this podcast, especially the secret, full-bodied bonus episodes that I don't announce on social media. So, subscribe for free now at nataliemclean.com/subscribe. Meet me here next week. Cheers.